Welcome to Calvary, Clayton. Yeah. It's all about perspective. Yeah. Welcome as we enter the zone of illumination. Illuminati's naughty, but like Jumpy, we be proclaiming the story.
Hey, it's Pastor Kevin with another biblical perspective, this time on the mission of marriage. Last marriage ministry, we talked about some things that I introduced. Some of you were not there, but we're going to be having some pretty detailed discussion about it coming up this particular marriage ministry. So I want to hit these things so that you're ready for it. And it's basically 3 questions, but it's centered around what I call the mission of marriage. Everything that God creates, He creates with a purpose. He creates it with a purpose for why it's created, and it has some function that it serves, and we see that within creation as we look out at everything. It works together because God is God and He's perfect, and everything that He does has perfection tied to it and a purpose to it. Well, our lives are no different as humans, and marriage is no different. In fact, I want to read it out of Genesis. We're going to read a few verses in Genesis. If you're looking at it on the screen, I'm going to read Genesis chapter 1, verse 26 through 28. Spend my time in verse 28, and we'll go from there. Notice it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in His own image. In the image of God, He created him. Male and female, He created them. Not going to get into all that language this time. Verse 28, where we'll focus. "Then God blessed them, and He said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over every living thing that moves on the earth." So wonderful. God made us in His image. He blessed us. He pronounced His blessing upon us, and then He gave direction to man. And really, even though Eve wasn't created at this point, He gave this blessing to both of them. And we, as their offspring, are still operating within this call that God gave to them to have dominion. So look in verse 28, the 3 things. He says, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. Beautiful. In other words, God said, I want you to duplicate yourselves and fill the entire earth. And the population of the planet now is 8 billion people, but we still haven't filled the earth. I'm not even sure if we occupy 20% of the earth. The earth is huge. Global elites often say that we need to reduce the population of the earth in order to sustain life. That is a lie from the pit of hell. We could never fill the earth because God created the earth to be able to sustain us and provide for us. And so there's plenty of room. When I fly over the country, the United States, or even over continents, I see a lot of land that is unused. And so God called us to fill the earth. That was the first thing. The second thing, though, He said here is to subdue it. I like the word subdue. Subdue means to bring it under subjection, to forcefully subject it to a order or process. It means to bring it under bondage. In other words, that we, as those who are made in the image of God, are to subdue our environment to bring it under the order and the direction of God. I love that. And then the last thing He says here, if you notice, is that we should have dominion over the earth. In the word dominion, which I'm going to look up for you, beautiful in and of itself, it means to to scrape out, to tread down, to carve out. In other words, God is saying that we need to bring some section of the planet into carve out a space for ourselves and bring it under the direction and the order of God. That is the call that He's given to us individually. So myself as a pastor teacher, I am carving out, if you will, this environment that He's given me to influence those whom He's put within my sphere of influence, to bring in order this call that I have to be pastor, to be teacher, to be making disciples. That's what He's called me to do. And He's called you to do something within your sphere of influence. But how does that relate to marriage and the mission of marriage? Well, it does. 3 questions that I want you to consider, you and your spouse. Number 1, how do you discover the mission or the call of God for your marriage? If you're single, you can do the same thing, but this is for the married couples. What passion has God put within both of you that truly gives you a sense of fulfillment and blesses God and others, something that's about more than your own satisfaction. Another thing you can ask yourself, if money were not an issue, if you didn't have to go to work to provide for your family, well then what would you actually do that would bring God glory and that would build his kingdom? And I want you to think about that. That's probably your passion. And you want to begin to pray together as husband and wife about, well, what on earth has God called us to do? And what area of influence on the earth has he called us to scrape out or to carve out a section of it and bring it into the subjection to the order of God? Question 2 is, well, how do you design your lifestyle to accomplish that call and that mission? You know, one of the things that we talked about in marriage ministry, is to become financially sound so that you have the flexibility to do the things that God has called you to do, not being a slave to the system of this world, for instance. Or maybe he's called you to get rid of things or people that hold you back. Everything in your life needs to be flowing in the direction of the calling that God has placed within your life, the mission that he's given to your marriage, because I believe that your marriage unit in and of itself has a specific call of God and how you glorify him. And that call could be many things. You may say our call is to have a big family, to have godly seed, to increase the kingdom by discipling children in our own home. That's great. Another marriage may say, hey, our call is to foster or to adopt kids and bring them up in a Christian environment. Hey, that's great. Another marriage may say our call is to go on the mission field or to support specific missionaries. That's great. Another marriage may say, we believe our call is to actually serve in ministry, supporting ministry, whatever the case may be. God will show you what that is. It may be a business that he's given you to run where you are ministering to the employees that work for you. Whatever the case may be, what is your marriage accomplishing for the kingdom of God? The third question that I need you to consider is, how do you design your roles within your marriage to be most effective at fulfilling that particular call or mission that you feel like God has given you? For the man, it may be, how do you become a more spiritual leader, which you're called to be, specifically as it relates to the mission of your marriage. Ladies, wives, it could be, if you have clearly identified the mission in your marriage, well, how do you help achieve it? How do you enhance it? How do you make it more effective, if you will, more efficient, and so forth? How do you use all of the things that God has given you and put within you to make it something that functions so much better than it ever could without you? Those are some things you need to look at. And then also, the goal is to design your roles within your marriage to be most effective at fulfilling that call of God for your life. I think that if we just go through life, waking up, going to work, just going through the routine, that's not what God called us to do. He called us to be on an adventure for him and to find out what it is he wants us to do, and then come together as husband and wife and figure out, how do we get this done for the Lord, and let it be an adventure. So I pray that you discover the call of God for your marriage and that you begin to design your life around that call. Hey, come to marriage ministry, August 27th, 6 o'clock in the sanctuary. We're going to dig into it together. God bless you. I don't know if that came off good or not.